I'm Eric Trommater, and this is UK Cinema History. This week, part 3 of our discussion of 2024 in review with Yasi Sofi, Sila Blume, and special guest star Vern.
Yeah, okay, so we get to the prestigious dramas of the year, which most of the time kind of frustrates people. The most kind of call them like with this reductive term of Oscar baits, but I'm going to call them the movies with legendary filmmakers with legendary performances and movies that can show you where cinema is going and what is this medium is capable of. Also, that it also includes many like new voices that like kind of ushering in a new generation. So uh one of those movies is Brutalist, that to me is like tar of this year. uh we have Complete Unknown, we have Brutalist. We have a movie that I'm really looking forward to. Pedro Almodovar's movie. I haven't watched that one yet. Room Next Door, and a movie that no one's talking about again went under the radar is Robert Zemeckis Here, and he did a fantastic technical.
Not to be confused
Not
with the
your
here on my list.
exactly, not to be confused with the Belgian Here that Eric mentioned. This is Robert Zemeckis Here, and and then Civil War to me goes to in this category. Furiosa, amazing movie, goes here. Joker Foliada goes here, and but the one that I like to talk about is Conclave, Edward Berger's Conclave. That I'm not sure if we're going to have a room about with Conclave, or like should I like talk about it
No,
right now?
absolutely not. Absolutely not. So yes, go
No,
ahead.
because I thought that maybe tomorrow after we could have the room after the Golden Globes, because I'm pretty sure that he's going to win a few things, at least for the star cast of
Well,
John Lithgow,
you're
Ralph
you're
Fiennes, Stanley
you're an
Tucci,
admin.
and
You're an admin, Yazzie. Schedule it then.
but we'll see, we'll see. I don't know, but what I liked about the movie was the cinematography. Is It's on par with the paintings, and we talked about it like the Caravaggios and the Vatican, and the sound editing, the use of close-ups in this movie. We hear Ralph Fiennes breathing, and from the technical aspect, this could have been, I don't know, like we have a pope. This could have been uh like so many other movies that happen in Vatican. But what this movie separates itself from those movies is, I think, the score. Also, Brutalist as a as an amazing score. These are score. It's like we were watching a horror movie. These kind of spar, uh, one string kind of
But
scores.
a very sparse score for Conclave. Very,
Very,
very
very.
austere. Very, very yes. Let's talk about Conclave for a moment because it brings up something that I've noticed as a trend, and I'd like we can open up the whole room to this question, but Conclave is reminds me of so many different films that I saw in 2024 where I'm watching it for the first hour and a half and saying, "Wow, this is a terrific movie," and it just seems to really fall apart at the end. And uh, and I know that is somewhat common in film, but it's really common this year, and it has nothing to do with the things that you praised for the technical aspects of it. It's always in the screenplay, and it's always in the story. And I am gonna throw this out, and you all can uh, uh, interject. I wonder if that has anything to do with the writer's strike, that maybe these screenplays are going before the camera before they've been worked over quite enough. And, the lumps have been sort of worked out of them. Perhaps, these are films that in years past might have gotten another rewrite, which I think Conclave would have been on my list had maybe, somebody gone over it with a fine tooth comb. Or the other theory that I have is that perhaps because so many people are going to see these films on streaming, and they're paying attention to their phone more than the film, and the film is on in the background, that maybe these screenplays aren't being written with the detail that they had before, because they don't feel like the audience is quite paying attention the way they were when they knew that they were going to be in the theater. But I'm going to open that up to discussion, and or if anybody's got any other any theories, or if am I wrong? Is this something that that isn't happening, and I'm just noticing it more?
I'm just hoping that number two is not the case.
Yes, we can all hope. Yes, yes, that is true. Yazzie, you have any thoughts on that?
I think that we should let these filmmakers to make more movies and become these kind of prestigious film, like the old people that are refusing to resign. uh, you know, because we need to see these filmmakers, these old filmmakers. We need their, so a category that uh, a very important category, my documentary list had two lots of documentaries about music, and a part that I called it, you know, our love for cinema. And it had a lot of Scorsese had two documentaries this year. One like Made in England about Power and Pressburger, and the
Well,
other one,
we'll get to
Filipinos.
those. We'll
Oh,
get
we
to
get
those
to
because we're
those.
doing a whole
No, I
section
just
on,
wanted to say,
yeah.
we
We're
need to.
Vern had something. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Vern, please.
When you get wound up, I don't want to interrupt you, but I think I need to wind up for a second here to answer that question. But I think I often feel when I'm watching films very underwhelmed the way that you have spoken about a few films, Eric. And uh, and for me, I don't have the cycles. Like I have this crazy job, and I've got these kids keeping me super busy, and New York life, and lots of books to read. So when I watch films, and it doesn't have to be an enjoyable experience, but it has to feel like it was worthwhile and some way enriching to me. And so when I don't have that experience when I watch a film, I'm less inclined to watch the next film or the next new film. Like I'll go back to old classics, and or I'll watch like TV series, or I'll read books, or I'll listen to podcasts instead of watching movies. And the thing is, like I have thousands of DVDs in my house, so I love watching films, but I don't like having mediocre experiences with films. And so I've actually been having this issue. I've had it with two recent media. So for many years, I put off watching The Handmaid's Tale because I didn't have Hulu, and I thought eventually it's going to end up on one of the other streaming services, and it just never happened. So this year, I watched it, but it's like I like watching a lot of streaming services. A lot of the series, they're too long. Like sometimes 8 hours, 10 hours, it's too much. And so a lot of times what I'll do is I'll do my own edit. So I'll watch the first two episodes and I'll watch the last two episodes. And then if it felt like it was worthwhile, then I'll watch the whole thing. So when I watched The Handmaid's Tale, I watched the first two episodes, the last two episodes of season one. It was underwhelming. So then I went back and read the book, and I'm just not inclined to fill in those extra 4 hours. And I feel like a lot of times when I watch movies, I have the same experience. Like I'll watch the movie, it'll do some things for me, but it doesn't really hold up. And then I end up nitpicking it to death in my head. Like everything that I didn't like about it. And so it makes me less inclined to want to come back and watch more mediocre film, especially when there's all these other media that are competing, that are very competitive. So for me, I like the cast of Conclave. The visuals look great when I look at the trailer. I'm hearing some pretty decent buzz, but a lot of times when I hear from people whose opinion I respect, if it sounds like yours, like yeah, but then I don't want to invest an hour and a half, 2 hours into that. And like with a film like that, it's one that I'd want to go see in a cinema. I don't want to pay $20 and then spend an hour and a half getting to the theater, an hour and a half back. And the whole time, on the way home, I'm just going to be griping to my kids about how awful it was or how it didn't live up to our expectations. And, one thing, because Sila said that he saw, what did he just say? He just saw the Dead Ringers. In that same vein, my daughters, this is the first time they've done this. They both, like individually, they've taken me to movies before, but they've never both taken me to the movies. So last night they took me to Metrograph, one of our favorite theaters, and we watched John Carpenter's The Thing. And Starman is one of our favorite alien movies from when they were little kids. So we saw The Thing, and we picked it apart because our main criticism of the film was that it's this Antarctic science expedition, and there are no scientists. We're like, where was the science? Uh, and we had a lot of fun with it. It was like an enjoyable film for us. And I think sometimes when I go to films, there's no joy and there's no enrichment. It just feels like I just want to quibble with it to death. And I think that's one of the things that often happens when Yasi and I, when we're talking offline, when she recommended that I see Complete Unknown, I've never developed any appreciation for Bob Dylan. Like when I was a kid growing up in West Virginia, where there's lots of folk music, he just was a guy who couldn't sing, and I don't like Timothy. So I'm open to sing, but when I said those two things to her, she got really upset with me, and she's like, "Oh, it's your loss." And then she didn't make the pitch, And then she's like, "Oh, you're just reading all the stuff online, and they're talking like it's a bad biopic." And it wasn't any of that. It's just those two things. I don't really have an appreciation for Bob Dylan, and I really don't like Timothy. Like I don't get that. But if you make a good pitch to me, I'll watch it. And I feel like you guys made a very good pitch. So chances are, when it comes to my lane, I'll watch it. I might even go out of my way based on what you guys just said. But it's like I need to have that because I don't feel like I'm going to go watch a movie and it's going to be a bad biopic about Bob Dylan with Timothy doing cosplay.
So that's
That is the
exactly
yazziest
the
story I've ever heard.
do you see this is yeah, because look, I forgot to mention a movie that I pitched this year throughout the year to everyone, and I can't forgive myself for not talking about it on. I think I talked about it too much this year that it kind of, and it's Strange Darling. Strange Darling is a movie that first of all, you should go in blind. That's the thing about the movie. And what it says about the era that it's made in, it's the thing that I was talking about at the beginning of the movie. How the marketing and the talking about surrounding a movie when, like, for the people who watch it for the first time, has changed and it's impacting the movies and kind of create this, I'm sorry, but this herd mentality over one movie. Oh, about, and whether we want it or not, it. we go into these movies with our cognitive biases. And I accept it. I said it again at the beginning of the movie, of the room, that we're going to have a room about the value of film criticism. So I'm not going to waste what I'm going to say on that room here. But I,
No, we're
this
having
is,
a correction, Yasi. We are having an entire series of
oh yeah, entire
9
series,
rooms
even better, even
on the
better.
value of film criticism.
So
Um, starting with Stanley Kaufman. Shameless plug. Sorry.
yeah, of course, yeah, but like, about A Strange Darling, what I did all year that made a few people so fast, it was, I was keep telling people, go watch it. I cannot tell you anything about the movie because this is a movie must be experienced with the watch in the theater, or like you need to sit and watch it. It it's a story told in a non-linear way. It's just like Brutalist. They made it on celluloids, 35 millimeter. So, and just because it's a totally indie movie, they had to kind of, the blocking, the mise en scène, everything had to be so meticulous because they didn't have the money for, because 35 millimeter is expensive. It's expensive filmmaking. They're not like Christopher Nolan, so they didn't have that at their. It was not handed into them, so they fought for that, and so they made this perfect movie. The use of everything has a meaning on that movie. And I'm not, that it's not something that I kind of like, that, oh, the color coding or, but it's, I think later they're going to talk about this film as a manifestation of its time. And something I can tell it almost about Timothée Chalamet and Bob Dylan, something that I told Eric actually yesterday, and it was, I told him that I didn't like Timothée Chalamet. I was so skeptical going to this movie. And, that's exactly what I thought. I thought that it's going to be a cheap impression of Bob Dylan and Joan Baez and all those people, like the Cash and everyone. And
Another Bohemian Rhapsody, right?
another Bohemian Rhapsody. And what happened was that I saw, these people, it's, as I said, it is, the beauty of this movie is this. First of all, choosing Timothy Chalamet is so smart. It's such a smart casting because this the era that this movie is happening in is the time that this guy Bob Dylan, he is going through this self discovery and personal transformation and artistic innovation, just like Timothy Chalamet, a young guy who is trying to find his voice. He is making mistakes. He is, he's been in media every day. We're seeing the way that different representations of himself. He is trying to kind of balance all that. And at the same time, at that moment of time, that's exactly what Bob Dylan is doing. He's going under this massive shift, and the music industry is going through this massive and political, atmosphere of the time is going through this massive shift. So these are the artistic choice that I think subtle, very subtle in this film, and uh, kind of give it. It's not Dune. It's a different, and uh, you know he learned, what I was saying, that these young filmmakers, going back to Eric's question, that why we see some, I don't know, script mistakes or some type of like continuity mistakes film, young filmmakers, the new filmmakers, the upcoming filmmakers, the young voices, they must make these movies, they must make these mistakes so that they perfect their craft. And I think this is what we need to give them chance for that to happen. You know, this what happened to Chalamet, I think, is that first of all, he is introducing Bob Dylan, this legendary musician, songwriter, artist, to people who like him, his generation, his age. He went through this, he learned new skills to perfect this role. And that's how an artist is these small challenges creates a good artist. These mistakes should be made. On Asteroid City, it has continuity mistakes. I think he is those are deliberate. And you should, because you should know, and to get to that point, you should know the craft. You should know the medium that you're working with, this mold that you're working with, the complexity of it, you know. So and again, going back to like uh the the way that we go to watch these movies, I think I know that it's so hard to say that, but this is what I am trying to do. And it's going to movies, putting all my biases, all my personal binaries, everything's aside, and watch every movie that I'm going to watch as their own entity, because they are just like people. They surprise you, they're full of creativity, and every single one of these movies, especially the ones that we mentioned today, you know whether like how misunderstood, I can like go on and on and on about how misunderstood Folia the Joker was, how the reactions were wrong about it, and or with Furiosa or with Civil Wars, and how many other things affect our viewership. I think the problem is this homogenization of you know our viewership to movies.
Go ahead, Vern.
This yeah, that's all. Like this, we should learn to the artists, they should not I think, yeah, it is your loss if you don't watch something. Every movie has something to say because they have the educational value. That's all I was trying to say. I was saying like every of the each of these movies, they're telling history from a point of view that it gives you the knowledge, it gives you the perspective, it gives you the universal perspective of something. And that nuance, the nuance
Interrupter,
is
Vern.
something
Go
that
ahead.
we lost. Yeah, nuance was something that we lost today. And that's what I'm trying to gain in my viewership of movies.
Okay. So I think when you get your head full of steam, you're doing, ironically enough, you're doing exactly what you're saying you don't want other people to do. And I think our whole relationship has been based on the fact that we, for over 2 years, every week we would be in these clubhouse movie rooms talking about films. And for the year that I was hosting the Understanding movie rooms, other people we were democratically selecting films, many of which I would not choose to watch myself, and I was moderating discussions for hours about movies that I otherwise would not have seen. So I have no problem if I pay the money or if I invest the time to watch a film. I am doing that. And I'm looking at the film, not as if it's the director's vision. I'm looking at it like it's an amalgam of what the screenwriters and the cinematographer and the director and the actors did. And sometimes when I watch those films, they just don't resonate with me, Vern. It has nothing to do with anything I read or anything that I saw or anything that I thought or anything that I saw before. It's like I've seen enough movies in my 57 years of life that when I'm watching them, it's going to work its chemistry on me. And I'm going to think about it in terms of other films that I've watched. But more importantly for me, I don't care about other films that I watch. For me, when I watch a film, it's about the experience it has with me. So when we were just talking about There Is No Evil or whatever that film is called, it resonated with me when I watched it because I've experienced that kind of thing before. But then, in particular, today when we started talking about it, I was just thinking about this murder that happened in my building. And that's more resonant than anything in film history. And that's going to be something that I'm going to think about when I watch that film in the future. So it's like I always meet the films where they are, and they can still disappoint me because not every film is made to resonate with Vern. And it doesn't have anything to do with all the little uh, uh, so-called reviews that I see on Letterbox that I use to kind of orient me because these are people that I've been following for years, and I know how their tastes jive with mine. That doesn't have any influence on how I watch a film. If I'm going to invest an hour and a half, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours in my living room, or if I'm going to get on a train and go out into one of these theaters in New York and spend $20 on a film, I want to have an enriching experience. And if it's not, sometimes I'll go back and I'll watch a film again, or I'll catch it in a couple of years when it's had a little bit of time to settle. But it's like you're trying to put everybody in this bucket. If every film that we watch doesn't resonate like it resonates with you, somehow that's a problem with us. And sometimes it's just that film doesn't resonate with that person, and that's all it is. It doesn't have to do with kind of any kind of mass Svengali experience. It's just it didn't resonate. It's not a thing about my critical faculties or Eric's or anybody else's. It's just that film didn't work on that night. But I
Yeah,
do have a
you
list. I have a list.
actually you
I have a list here now. And actually, that was one of the things I wanted to find out was because I remember you. I remember you promoting Strange Darling, and I was surprised that it didn't show up on your list before. And so I'm glad it's there. So I have a list of things that I am gonna revisit. Thanks, Steve.
no.
Before we get back to
So
you,
yeah,
Yazzie, I wanted to drill down. Oh, go ahead, Yazzie. I guess that's fine. But I had something I wanted to follow up with on
oh,
Vern's
okay. So
comment.
no, I just wanted to say, like, Vert, you got it completely wrong. So that's all I was trying to say was that totally the opposite what you were saying. I was trying to say that first of all, this relatability was something that I was talking to Sila during his Scorsese movies rooms that I said how this notion of relatability is killing the art these days and movies and cinemas because they limit the viewership of people. Like, why should I watch something that resonates with me, that relates with me? How, this, the this but why should something I mean the art be created to resonate with people? What kind of how can you
Yeah,
say what
but
kind of
see, Yasi, Yasi,
viewership is
I'm gonna
this?
interrupt. I'm gonna interrupt you here again, and I'm gonna remind you of something that we talked about many times over the years. When filmmakers make films for mass audiences, they are not trying to resonate with black boys that grew up on welfare that had lots of trauma. So no films are really designed to resonate with me. Like they don't market to me. So I don't have that expectation. So when I have 1,000 films in my house that I bought with my own money, none of them that were designed to resonate with me. When you look at my letterbox list of my favorite films, they're not designed to resonate with me. They just do. So
And
it's not about the artist or the director trying to appeal to my demographic or me as an individual. It's about them creating something and then me taking the time and my psychic energy to see if it resonates with me. And if it doesn't, then I keep it moving. And if there's a trend where I go to the theater lots of times and I know I still appreciate films. Like I watched some good films last year in 2023. All the films that Eric listed as 2020 his 2024 list were films that I saw in 2023 and I enjoyed all of them. I felt enriched by all of them. I was like really surprised. I was like, wow, these are 2024 films because I was going through the list on Letterbox and I was like, wow, I watched all of those. So, it's not like I have some absence in me and I'm not expecting the film to relate to me. I'm expecting there to be some synergy that comes from the experience of me going and investing my time in it. And I find that a lot of
this
films it
is
doesn't happen. That's all. Let Eric get a
This
piece, and then you can come back and you can tell my ear off again.
this is exactly why relatability is not the skill to go to movies, because throughout the film history, they've been making movies to relate to people that did not that were not made for you. That undervalues the diverse voices, and it like that's exactly what I'm saying. To it,
Let Eric go. Let him get a piece, and you can come back and chew me off some more.
Yeah, yeah, I am enjoying the drama, so I'm good with that. And we'll get back to the drama. I promise. I wanted to follow up on what you said, Vern, in terms of the time commitment, and I'm gonna make a statement, and you guys can agree or disagree. I think movies today, and even the 10 movies that I listed, every single one of them except I would say Chime because it's only 45 minutes are too long. When I used to go see a film, it was a 90 to 100 minute uh, 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 thing, and they were able to, within those restraints, make a film that was compelling. Today's films run 2.5, 3 hours for films that don't warrant that amount of time. And I think that has something to do with the fact that also, besides the writer's strike and besides the other things that we've discussed, why so many films start out so well and just kind of seem to fall apart is that they're going on just long enough for you to lose your love affair with the film and you start noticing the flaws more. And I wonder if that is something also that might go into what you had spoken about, Vern, in terms of how when you go spend time at a film, how it affects you.
Go ahead, Yasi. Go ahead.
no, I was gonna go back to Complete Unknown. Something happened on that movie. Like he starts singing Maggie's Farm, and while everyone expecting him to see a folk song. So the thing at that moment, what happens is that that song, you know, interpret as an allegory to escape and to for freedom, and the slavery and everything. He says like, I'm not gonna work on Maggie's farm no more. So it symbolizes that the rejection, that oppression, and the limitation focus, all those chains that they put in, on the expectations that exist from the artist, from the filmmaker. That metaphor, that moment in that film, I think that explains very well that why that we cannot like say that this movie resonates with that. That's not the I'm not, I'm talking to us as cinephile and as people that you know allow themselves to talk about movies. So I think this is our calling to do the same thing as Dylan did, to kind of say like this conflict, like how should we approach movies? How should we watch movies? How should we put aside our biases and go to art? And how they can surprise us just like that song. That song had the same message that they were expecting from his music to serve that purpose. But just because it was telling, it was in a different style, the expectations from that artist was something else. But now we're going back to that, and we feel that how important that was, that sound, that song had to be sung at that moment, and what that embodied, and that transformation, that dynamic, that electric power of that music, how important that was for that moment, and that artist had that vision. And I think how much that we expect the filmmakers to trust our uh, you know, uh, intelligence, we should also trust the artist. And, that's why I'm keep saying that the emphasizing on the importance of the objective viewership of movies
O-
for us,
Okay, but back
for
back to
us.
my point. Back to my point, Yazzie. Bob Dylan was recording a 3.5 minute song, and he knew was recording a 3.5 minute song, and the limitations of writing within that probably inspired him to create Maggie's Farm in a way that spoke to me. Whereas if he was allowed to double the length of that song, put in a drum solo, a bass solo, or what have you, um, it may not have affected me as much because it just goes on too long. Back,
Of the song or the movie?
well, the movie does.
Well,
It is
yeah,
a
he's
little
using the
long.
song as an analogy.
Yeah, the movie
and,
does
and
go on
and
too long.
and the thing
Yeah.
I would say is there's a film that I keep forgetting to watch with my kids, and it's a film that really resonated with me, I guess in 99, 2000, or in the 2000s. It was one of my favorite films in the 2000s, and I haven't watched it since I've had my kids. And when you describe what is it, the complete unknown, instead of sounding like a biopic, it sounds a lot like this film to me, because I love like the FDR era, and I'm always trying to find films that kind of convey a sense of what that must have felt like. And one of my favorite films for doing that was the Tim Robbins Cradle Will Rock. And when you describe Complete Unknown, it feels a lot like what Cradle Will Rock does for me. And
Oh,
so
that's great example.
that's all I need.
And also, like Cradle It Will Rock, the guest stars, so to speak, and the stunt casting is very well done in Complete Unknown. You don't they're playing characters. They're not walking on stage and like it wasn't I'm Bill Murray. Hi, I'm here. Like it wasn't like Oppenheimer. So yeah, so that's a great analogy.
But so again, going back to what Eric's question. So I think that is the problem that we see in Foliade, in Joker, that movie is trying to kind of showcase, and it's highlights, and it's that what happens when the artists keep trying to play to the audience expectations, and create art or this persona to please the audience, to please these studios and everything, and the danger of that. And it falls into this repetition, and this, and again, the lack of nuance, the lack of diversity, the lack of complexity, so many voices will be unheard, and all the problems with that. That's the beauty of Joker Foliado, I think. And that's exactly why I'm saying that we, we should not, like, that is not a kind of that's not how we should go to see movies. that is not a deep level of engagement with art. For at least, for people like us, we should take it to another level, and we should be, you know, inspiring for others to watch movies like that and like expand their viewership and watch things that it- we want diversity in cinema. We want different voices. We want new voices, new styles of storytelling. So if they keep making things that resonates with
Well,
people,
can we get diversity in cinema that runs between 90 and 110 minutes? That's all I'm at.
Yeah, I would.
yeah, please.
Yeah, that joke. I had something I was gonna say, and then that joke just knocked me off by. What was I gonna say? Oh, one thing I was gonna say is just like that's one of my issues. The running time is one of my issues with these TV series. They just go on. They feel like they got to fill 8 and 10 hours, and I'm like, I can understand with our attention span if you want to do like if you really want to do justice to Handmaid's Tale, uh, maybe you need 5 hours, so it's longer than a regular film, a feature film, but it doesn't have to be 8 hours. It doesn't have to be 10 hours. And like a lot of that extra, when I went back and read the book, I'm like, it didn't need all that extra. Like the book is much more streamlined, and I'm like, I wish they had just made the book instead of feeling like they had to inflate to fill 8-10 hour slots, you know, for ad share or whatever. Oh, we lost Eric. Oh, acoustic just came up. Did you wanna?
No, that's
Oh,
Sila.
is that the AI or something?
No, no, I'm not a.
Oh, that's Sila.
No, that's me. No,
Okay.
my other phone died, and I did not notice ahead of time, so I did not plug it in, and that's why I came with my other colleague. But I wanted to make a couple of comments to two different things: timing in terms of how long, and what Yasi and Vern were talking about. First of all, to time or span, there was a song, I can't remember which song, it must have been Bohemian Rhapsody, where, at least in the film, uh, they were told by the producers, you can't make that song, it's too long. And it's one of the greatest hits of Queen. And the music of Richard Wagner, it's probably a little bit overdone when I say it cannot be done in 1.5 hours. It has to be three, four, or five. That's probably out of my realm of capacity because I'm not Wagner. All I'm trying to say is, on one side, I understand the need or the calculation based on what I have experienced already that I need 90 minutes, and what I have seen so far has solidified my desire for 90 minutes. But I think, which I don't think is not what you're doing, I think is it's avoiding the artistry. Even if Handmaid's Tale goes for 25 hours, that's just whoever is capacitated or incapacitated to be creative has decided to do it that long. I don't think there's much to say against that. The length of an opera might not be necessary to be 5 hours, but there are certain things for which you need 5 hours. It's just some films that I have seen. I don't want to name anyone because I cannot think of anyone in particular, but I'm sure that some of the films I've seen, um, I did not notice that it was 3 hours because it was very well done. So I don't think the time is a problem. It's not a point for me. Another thing about, if I understood correctly, which I probably understood incorrectly from both sides, I think, Yasi, you are um, very passionate about things, like I think all of us are here in this room right now, every single one of us. But I cannot sell my passion. It's only mine. And I'm not criticizing with this. I'm just saying that's what I get from the discussion that was going on a few minutes ago. Um, and I think it's not possible, even though I think I know how you mean it. It is simply not possible to go anywhere without a bias. We all have biases. There's no way to get rid of it. And what we expect or not expect when we go in any art piece to watch, how much we expect and how much we do not expect, neither of them could be programmed. They are what they are. And I don't have any problems whatsoever with missing out on things. If I miss watching Barbie and I would have loved it, okay, I'm fine with it. I don't. I I'm fine with missing Barbie. I'm
I knowing you the way I do, Sila, no, you would not have loved it.
okay, but I just wanted to make those 2 points, namely the even though I listened to that for several months already, I don't think it's wrong to want the condension of 90 minutes, but I don't think it's doable. And when we go to watch a film or to listen to an opera or to a symphonic piece, they are just what they are. Maybe too long for me, and they might resonate with me. Same thing with the film um, Back to Black. To I believe during your discussion, I was saying to myself, maybe if I didn't like Amy Winehouse so much, I wouldn't have enjoyed the movie so much. I cannot get rid of my bias. I cannot get rid of liking Amy Winehouse. And nobody can impose on me, and I'm not saying you're doing anybody's doing that. Nobody can impose on me the beauty of Amy Winehouse. It's just I'm in it or I'm not. And at the same time, I understand the value of what you're saying, Yasi, in terms of we not only as cinephiles, but people in general, which is something I've been preaching a little bit a long time. We need as humans to absorb things in such a way that we could also absorb the things that we are actually rejecting until this minute. And suddenly, because of this piece, we learn to accept it. So, to me, the big combination between the two.
Yeah, I have two things I want to say because I recovered my point. One of them has to do with time, but the other point that I hadn't gotten to was I think Yasi is a joyful cinephile, and I think I'm a curmudgeonly cinephile. I love watching film. I love talking about film. I love bad mouthing film. But if it's not good, I'm going to quibble with it, and I'm going to relish quibbling with it. And and to get to the time thing, I don't have any problem with anything having a long running time. But if I'm looking at my watch for a third of the running time, there's a problem. So when I decided to watch The Handmaid's Tale after, I don't know, 4 years of anticipation, I expected to relish the experience because I have two daughters and I love the themes. And 1984 is one of my favorite books, and I've read it a million times. And I love these kind of dystopian futures, and I'm trying to get my daughters ready so it's something I can watch with them. And then when I'm watching it, like halfway through the second episode, I'm like looking at my watch. And then I'm like, is this going to get any better? Where is this going? Then I skip because oftentimes I don't want to invest 8 hours into something that is just going to nauseate me. So a lot of times with series, I'll go and I'll skip to the last two episodes to see where it's going. Watch the last two episodes. Didn't really get any better. So then instead of watching the middle episodes or just giving up, I went to the bookstore. No, I went to my bookshelf because I bought the book a couple of years ago and I read the actual book. So now I know what the people who produced the series did with the source material. And so I'm like, this isn't really reflective of what she wrote. I mean, it has a lot of the stuff, but there's a lot of changes. And so to me, it's not worth my time to go back and invest those extra 4 hours to get the middle episodes. But if it had been better, I wouldn't have any problem with watching it. That, and in fact, like I only have one TV in my house, and so it's four people live here, so we all got to share it. And so it's great for family bonding because when my kids, like, I can't watch a lot of movies because the kids are hogging the TV. And so I watch what they're watching. And my youngest daughter, she's 15 years old, she just discovered The West Wing. And I kid you not, as a family, we watched 5 seasons of The West Wing together, back to
That's what
back
you
to
get.
back to back to
That's
back
what
to
you
back
get for
episodes.
family bonding.
Right. And it's not just family bonding because if she's watching crap, I'm not going to watch it with her. So, and that's the thing. It's not even her cup of tea. Like, she likes these CBS police procedurals. And so when she started watching it, she doesn't follow politics. She doesn't like all these kind of Aaron Sorkin gymnastics. That's not her thing. But she was riveted. And so when I have a cinematic experience, if I'm investing all of that, if I'm going to bring all of Vern's faculties, because I don't leave any of my faculties when I'm watching something, I bring all of it. If I'm reading a book, if I'm reading a magazine, I bring all of Vern, 100%. And if the work is not up to it, it's going to catch some knuckles because I'm not going to invest this time and not do something with that built up kinetic energy. And so if I watch something that's not good, not only does it nauseate me, but it puts me off on the medium, and I will stop watching films. Like even old films that I like because I had such a bad experience. I have something wrong with my head, I don't know, because I love films. But I will stop watching them if I have like back-to-back experiences where it's just it just puts me off. And so I'm not a joyful cinephile. I'm a curmudgeonly cinephile, and I want to love my movies. So I don't want to watch stuff that's just going to have me looking at my watch because I've never walked out on a film. Occasionally, now that I'm in my mid 50s, I'll fall asleep on one, but I never walk out, and I try not to. If I start it, I try to finish it. Like there's a lot of miniseries I won't finish, but if I start a film, I'm going to finish it, even if it takes me 2 or 3 days. But I don't want it to be a nauseating experience because then it's going to put me off on other films, and I don't want that to happen. But I always
So,
bring everything. I always bring everything.
Just one thing I want to, one additional point. Yasi, you have a absolutely beautiful and intellectual energy. A lot of people with that energy would explode. They would not be able to handle it.
I
so
I,
I want
I
to. No,
believe
no, wait a second. Wait, please, please, please,
she's
please,
about to
Vern.
explode right now.
Yeah, I was gonna say, do you know exactly what he's doing? Vern is doing. First of all, he's cornering me, and Vern, stop poking the bear, because you know that you know all the conversations that I try to avoid having with Vern, he's bringing them up right now, just because he wants me to answer to the things that I always avoid. But okay, to go back, first of all, thank you so much, Sila, everyone, for caring so much about my rants about like art and movies. So I have an answer to all of you, Eric, Bert, Sila, everybody.
Oh
And
yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah,
what
yeah.
movies teach, what they teach me watching them, like with this approach of putting aside, like with self-awareness and putting aside we're going to even watching the things that I know it's not my taste. It's recognizing, it teach me about my biases, it teaches me a new perspective. it avoids the binary, like teach me to avoid this binary thinking, you know, to stop, to avoid like labeling things as good or bad, to embrace art, every piece of art, and respect the artist that created it as an artist and as some, of its own, and give it the value of it, give it the merit that it deserves. It teaches me about myself. Like if something like, Vern, I'm not falling into your trap, but if anything that I think that it's been considered a masterpiece and I think that I cannot resonate with it, I try to go and, you know, ask myself this question, that why it's not resonating with me. Where are my prejudice towards this? For instance,
I will give you those points, Yazzie. You can find good things in bad movies better than any human being I know.
oh, thank you.
That
Like
that that
it's Sila.
that is one of your great skills.
Sila just talked about Amy. I was complaining, yeah, last night that why BAFTA uh, nominated the Amy Winehouse movie Back to Black in every single category. And because I was thinking that it's going to be another musical biopic. See? So now, of course, Sila, you're absolutely right. The other's opinion, everything, it impacts our viewership. It impacts our mindset. That's what I'm saying. For as people who are coming here together and talking about movies, I think we should try to kind of, you know, advocate for more open mind viewership, kind of ask people to see things that they don't normally go and watch, and or just like what you said, if like, this, our test of endurance, our test of watching a slow burn, our test of listening to, uh, you know, the genres of music that we don't listen to. Like, I don't know, like maybe opera is not popular today or jazz is not popular today. Maybe I have to put myself through that so that it teaches me about myself and it gives me nuances. And let's approach everything with curiosity, this, and avoid this instant kind of opinions. Like at the moment, there's so many movies that I see, and right after that, if you ask me like what was your opinion, I'm gonna say, I don't know, I got bored, I was like looking at my watch many times. But then I come home and then I reflect on it, and then my opinion changes. On rewatches it changes, to avoid the instant judgments. That's what I learned from art, that's what I learned from watching movies.
Well, to that point, Yazzie. This is a question. I'm not stating it as an answer, but um, when we talk about judging a film, do we have to judge a film in its entirety? I'll use the Conclave as an example. If just if partial films were allowed on a list, the first 90 minutes of Conclave would have been on my top 10 list. But then the whole entire film falls apart for me. And I wonder now, so am I being ungrateful then for the very good 90 minutes that I saw because the last 45 to 50 minutes of the film don't work for me? And and I throw this open to everyone. Um, you know, is that how we need to judge things, or is it based solely on rewatchability? I'm not gonna go rewatch Conclave simply because I know the last 45 minutes really dragged for me. I wonder, is when we're saying this is the best film of the year, are we just saying this is the most rewatchable film of the year? I watched Berlin Alexanderplatz a couple of weeks ago in its entirety. Sorry, Sila, I know how you feel about German film, but I just have to use an example. And it is so many hours long, and yet it flies by, and I have absolutely no problem with how long is, because of course it was a TV series that was turned into a movie. So when I say I think films are today are too long, I think they're too long for their subject matter, and they're too long for the films that they're being made. If they made more Berlin Alexander plants and less Conclave, then I would not even be talking about the length of films. I think.
Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna do a couple of little analogies because to me, I don't like having abstract conversations. It's always personal with me, and I'm gonna say two things as a parent, like because my wife and I were extreme opposites, for good reason, right? And so I think some of this might be men are from Mars and women are from Venus, but I think it's even deeper than that. So with our children, like my oldest daughter, she's 18, she's applying to colleges now, and throughout her life, she's always done drawings and she's always written stuff. And the way mother parents is anything my children present to my wife, she's yay and celebrating, and it's the most beautiful and it's the most wonderful. And my wife, she's a discerning artist. Like that's her in her profession. She's an artist. She has an MFA. So everything that she sees that the kids produce, it's great. Everything that they write, it's great. It's always wonderful. With me, if I don't like it, I'll say, I'll grunt, I'll I'll shrug my shoulders. I won't say it's crap, but I'm gonna give my real opinion of it. And so they're used to, and this is the thing. My wife, she grew up in a very idyllic environment, very middle class, not much struggle. I, on the other hand, have a lot of trauma, and I wasn't coddled as a child. And so I don't know how to express those muscles. But my children love my wife and I equally. And as my oldest daughter is writing her college essays, which, she's applying to 20 schools and they've all got all these supplemental essays that they have to write, she doesn't go to mom when she's ready to do a rewrite and a rewrite of the rewrite and the rewrite of the rewrite of the rewrite. She comes to dad because she's going to get empty calories from mom. Mom is going to celebrate no matter what she does. And her mother, she's a good writer, she's a good artist, but she doesn't bring the criticism, like the hard criticism. And I think there's room for joyful cinephiles, and there should also be room for curmudgeonly cinephiles, because I don't need the move the like I'm not saying value judgments, the film was good or bad. I'm saying some films make me feel enriched, and some films make me feel nauseous. And some nauseating films I'll come back to again. Like the first time I watched John Dillman, I was like, what the heck was that? I saw it in the initial run. No, not in the initial run. When it came back to New York City, I saw it in the initial run in the theaters. And I was in my mid 20s. And I was like not expecting that. And then I came back for it again. And I think I've probably watched it in the last 20 years 20 times. Right? And so I'm willing to stretch. But not every drawing is a masterpiece. Not every film is worthy of resonating with Vern. And so I will stretch, like the whole time that we were doing understanding movies. For the first year we were watching Daniel's films and my films, but for the last year, for the second year, it was like we were doing votes, and whatever the room decided, that's what we would talk about. And there were lots of films that I spent hours moderating conversations and researching the movies and rewatching them once and twice and three times. Movies that I didn't really like, but by the end of our discussions, I think I appreciated all of them. And not all movies are worthy of those kind of discussions. There are some things that Eric won't even get, like he said, we're not talking about that. There were some films that Daniel said, we're not talking about that. I would watch anything. I'm open to watching anything as long as we're going to have an enriching conversation about it. But there's going to be a lot of movies that I'm not going to want to suffer through because I'm bringing all my faculties to it. And some things trigger my trauma, and some things don't live up to my standards, and some things just I don't want to do that much work to figure out to fix this guy's mess because he couldn't do things the right way. So I think there should be space for Yasi and I on the spectrum of cinephilia.
And I just feel like I was beating on a dead horse. No, but that's exactly what I'm saying. Like, embrace that ambiguity, embrace that nauseated feeling. That's exactly what I'm trying to say. That's what that every emotion created by every movie, every piece of art that teaches you something about yourself. Why? And that's why it has the value.
And what I'm saying is I
Eric's
do learn
question.
things about
Eric's
like I
question.
couldn't I do learn from almost every experience I have. But there are some experiences that I don't want, I can learn from other ways. So there are some things I just don't want to, I don't want to
So
appreciate
that's
the,
exactly what I'm saying. So accept that you are stubborn in your viewership. Anyway, to go back to what Eric asked, what Eric said was a very good question. That should we embrace like a movie for its whole entirety, or like if the a movie has one thing that we like, is good thing about the movie like Conclave, for instance, is it how should we judge that? And Eric, to that question, that's something that Vern actually said right now. I think it answers your question. That's something that I'm keep saying is that the conversation about movies is part of the movie making. Ask, don't argue. This is like this approach. Talking about movies, engaging in constructive discussions, this collaborative viewing that we have, like these small communities, like three, four, five, or any amount of people, that is that gives us new new ideas about the movies, new perspective about the movies. Like I said, like we talked about Conclave, about the ending. I said I saw those laughters. My interpretation of those laughters, of those like camera, after that 2 hours of the movie, I think every single camera angle, every single facial expression in Conclave had a meaning. Because the movie, like the power of that movie is that two people sitting in front of each other and they do not have any conversation. They're not word exchanging, but we know exactly what they're talking about. Those I like the way that they look at each other, those exchanges. So that's why I think that those laughters, those nuns laughing at the end of the movie, is it has a meaning. For instance, as like the other example, again, we were talking about the Fableman. I told you that that was not the movie that I expected the Fablesman to be. See, this is my problem. This is exactly what I said. I do not. That's not how I like to watch movies or talk about. But there is that ending scene where David Lynch played as John Ford and gives like the Spielberg, like the look at the horizon and then get the fuck out of my office. Just for that, I give that movie, like, I don't know, that movie changed my life for that scene, that one sequence. So
I'm going to interrupt for a sec. You were about to put stars on it, and that's a good question. Like, are
and
the
I avoid.
uh, the things we do with the letterbox? You know, the thumbs up and the thumbs down. The what's the difference between 3.5 stars, 4 stars, 4.5 stars, 5 stars? Yeah, et cetera. Is that a good way to even judge movies? I wonder.
So you see, I just avoid that. Like, I was about to go there because that's how we get treated like that. That's how, this is the wrong system. That's what I'm trying to do. Like, I don't want to fall into that trap of giving movies stars, or like just judging them by, this kind of trend that ranking them, rating, you know that this is everything has nuance. We should embrace the nuance. That creates more innovation, that creates more discussion, that like expands our viewership, expands our characters as, we individually. That's what I like about movies.
You
That's all
know
I
that
have.
on the question of like the star ratings of films, and I don't know if other people have a lot of variances, but when I watch films, because I've been logging my things on Letterbox for about probably 7 or 8 years, and an interesting thing that I noticed about my viewing history, because of the way that they've calibrated their tracking, is if I rate a film, if I log a film and I rate it each time I log it, Letterbox keeps track of that. And something that often happens with me, I have a very bad. I've always had a very bad memory, and a lot of times when I watch films, even my favorite films, like Chinatown is a film that I've seen dozens of times since I was 16, and I often forget things in it, even though I've seen it dozens of times and it's one of my favorite films. And one of the things that I notice, like as I go back and rewatch a lot of films, is when I rate them, my rating can range sometimes as many as 3 stars. Like there have been films that I watched, I gave them 1.5, then I gave them 4, and then I gave them like 2.5 the last time I watched it. And my ratings, like my scale, it's very subjective. Like if you look at my letterbox profile, like the 5 stars is like supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, and like a masterpiece, like I think something like the Godfather 1 and 2, I think I gave 4 stars. And 4 stars is a masterpiece, but to get to 4.5 and 5, it has to have done something to me. It has to have affected my humanity in somehow, some way, in some memorable, sustainable way. And so when I go back and I look at, like, they're not static. Like my stars aren't static. Like I can watch a movie back to back, and the ratings that I give it can go up and down like a full star and a half. Like that happens with some regularity, because sometimes it's based on my mood. Sometimes it's based on something I recently read. Sometimes it's based on something I remembered 3 days later. And now I want to go back and add another star because I had forgotten about that. So the stars, they don't have to be these static things where you put 3 stars on it and that's what it is forever. It's just an indicator. And for somebody with a bad memory like me, it's like I want to, when I go back and rate it, I don't rate it before I've watched it. So when I go back, it's interesting for me to see what I gave it the last time, to look at the date of when I gave it that rating, and sometimes think, oh, I wonder what was happening then. And then for me to give it a different rating, or to like, oh, I wonder why it was so bad that time because it's one of my favorite movies. So I don't think that we have to look at these stars as static systems, like they can be different things to different people.
Well, and the other question I would have would be the sliding scale then. So when and I thought your example with The Godfather is a perfect one. Okay, if we're rating, and I'm just gonna pick one of my top 10 favorite movies of all time, Ingmar Bergman's Persona at 5 stars, right? And I'm comparing it to, say, Orson Welles' Touch of Evil, a film I've seen many, at least 20 times in my life. So it obviously is one of my favorite films, right? How can I give that film though the same 5 stars that I'm giving a masterpiece like Persona, even though they are in my life on the same level? That is to say, I've seen them both an equal number of times. One is truly a work of art. The other is, for everything that is great about it, basically just a crime film. And I I have trouble with that sliding scale when you are assigning a value like stars to it, whether or not it's flexible.
Yeah, I think the way to think about it is think about an hour. Think about an hour. An hour is 60 minutes, right? But not every hour is the same hour. A meter is a meter, but not every meter is the same distance. Like if I'm trying to stretch to save my life and I've got to reach out a meter, like that's different than if I have to walk a meter to get to the threshold of the door. So that they don't have to be measuring the same thing, And for me, like the 4.5 and 5 stars, it's about sentiment. Like 4 stars is a masterpiece. Like Citizen, like all there's a bunch of movies that I consider that I know I appreciate their masterpieces, but they never get to the 4.5, 5 stars because there's nothing sentimental to me. And then there's a lot of films that are extraordinarily sentimental to me that I give 5 stars, and anybody else looking at it would be like, well, what's that about? And if you ask me about it, I could spend 3 hours unpacking why this film that is otherwise mediocre is to me better than all these other masterpieces. And so, I think, you got to do some calculus in your head with this stuff. You got to do some differential equations and some integrations. It's not just addition and multiplication, it's more sophisticated than that.
So I have a suggestion because I want to get to my final category, which was documentaries. And I suggest to watch more documentaries because they have the nuance. Documentaries are the best vessel to tell the story, and they have the artistic value. And I'm going, as I said, especially this year, it had a lot of love letters to cinema. One of them was Vern. When I was watching it, because I was so surprised, and it was Merchant and Ivory. The other one was Scorsese's Made in England, and so the Christopher Reeves documentary, Will and Harper. I think Will and Harper is one of those documentaries that tells you about it talks about the transgender community for the reality of it, and it's so beautiful. The other one, Jim Henson, The Ideal Man, I think it was amazing to see, like, what an artist goes through for what he goes through to create something that matters to him. Another one was the Movie Pass that I really liked because it was about the audiences. Exactly what you guys were talking about, like the amount of time, the amount of money, everything that the audiences go through to watch that movie, you know. And okay, and this one, I handpicked it for Sila. This is a documentary about Ryuichi Sakamoto, the the musician, the guy who made the score for Reverend, for Bertolucci movies, for Last Emperor, for Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence, for so many masterpieces. This documentary is made by his son, and he is, again, I have to add him to the people that we loved last year. What we see in this movie is that he's sitting behind the piano playing his last concert. It's so raw. We see every wire, the microphones, sometimes even the reflection of the camera in and the piano. But it's such an immerse and beautiful experience watching a master playing his magnum opus, his like swan song, his last piece of music. It's captivating, and it has the silence moment. And for a documentary about a musician, those silence moments, those quiet moments are even more captivating than when he is playing. It's a privilege for someone who likes movies and had like, you know, uh, the like for instance the music for Mr. Lawrence or Last Emperor, the soundtracks that we remember all the time and we love and appreciate, and also to see this artist creating them and playing them for the last time. It's virtuous. That's what I can say. It's like it's a sublime experience. That was my and the Beatles documentary by Scorsese. It's so cozy. It makes you cry. It's so I don't know how to say it. This is, this is a master at work. You see how we talked about it with Sila, that when someone with the knowledge of music, when a historian, when a scholar makes a documentary, that's how it is. That's how it comes out. It's amazing. And there is this documentary with someone that we get to know her in Clubhouse, Miranda Sapon. She made a documentary about the abortion. The movie's called What If? Sorry, What Is? It's so touching. It's like you know a poetic documentary. It is a scripted documentary, but still it is with real people. That was one of my greatest watch this year, and I'm so glad I was so lucky to get to know her, to see this movie. Another documentary that I think I have to recommend is another music documentary. It's on HBO. It's about the influence of women in music, and it's called The Loudest Voice. Uh, I don't know, guys. If you remember any documentary you want to like add it, so I'm pretty sure that I have a few more documentaries on my list.
Which was the one about the trans?
Oh, Will and Harper. It's Will
Okay,
Ferrell and yeah, his one of their
right.
colleagues, and yeah, it was so amazing. It was, it's funny. So, and it's a road trip. It's a road movie. Going back to that, like so many road movies, and so they go on this trip and to the places that they used to go, and when Harper was when one of them was a man, and now she goes as a woman, and it's again, that is, you feel so close to them, to the characters, to the real people, the real stories, and people's reactions. It was lovely. Christopher Reeve's documentary is so sad, but yeah, I kind of, oh, and there's a great documentary about John Williams, also, if you're interested.
Yeah, because of this incident that happened in my building between this trans woman and my mailman, talking to my neighbors, and I have a lot of like I live in a small co-op. It's got 29 units in it, and like we all know each other really well. And so as we're trying to piece together what happened, initially, like the woman who stabbed the mailman, We could see in the news reports because the police did a perp walk, and she's a very tall and thin. Like she towers over everyone, like all the police officers that are arresting her. She's very tall and she's very thin. I have a very tall, thin daughter. My daughter is 6 feet, and this girl was taller than that. So she's 6'4". And so I thought it was, it's a girl, she's 24, and I'm just seeing my daughter in that situation. And this was like before we found out what happened. So, there was confusion and kind of sympathy, like about how a 24-year-old girl could end up stabbing this really nice mailman. And then, like today, we found out that it was a trans woman. And my neighbors' attitudes really changed. And I have a lot of gay men who are neighbors, and I was really a little bit surprised by like the transphobia. Like they didn't say anything that was, but it's just like, oh, because she lives in supportive housing, that had just been built. Like there was a big brouhaha for the supportive housing for LGBTQ, like right down the block. And so, so I've just been thinking about, like the way that people, like most of my neighbors are African American, and a lot of them are gay men. And I was just thinking, like African American men, like bad stuff, like African American men are doing perp walks and on the New York Post every day, committing acts of violence. And if every time someone saw an African American man commit an act of violence and they just thought, well, that's just what all black men are like, like because that's how they're treating this trans woman. Like we should take away the supportive housing because it's another one of those trans. And I'm like, well, we have a lot of trans people in the neighborhood. I can't remember the last time one of them committed a crime. So why all of a sudden, because this one does something kind of heinous, well, extremely heinous, are we condemning all trans people? And up until yesterday, everybody thought she was a very sweet person. So it was just astonishing. And so, I'm thinking I need to watch, a couple of good films just so I understand it a little better. I mean, I do know some because in my kids' school, they've grown up with some kids that were transgender, but I don't have any kind of acquaintance with them. And I think this is to get back to your point earlier, Yasi. For me, this is a way for me to learn vicariously. Like I do use films, as I've said many, many times. I have always, since I was an infant, used films to learn vicariously. Like that's so, I definitely, I think that film is on, like, one of my neighbors who makes documentary films, he recommended the William Harper, and I keep slipping off my radar. So that's one that I definitely
Oh,
want
but
to watch.
Vern, I'm glad you said that. There was this documentary that I wanted to recommend to you because you like these movies about father daughters. It's called Daughters. It is a story of four sisters that four girls that their father, African Americans, and their father is spending time in jail. So, and their relationship with their, you know incarcerated fathers when they're absent, and how each of them deal with that. And I think you are going to love that. It's it's sometimes when these documentaries are so hard to watch, it made me cry. It's hard for me to recommend, but yeah, now that you brought it up, I think you must watch it, especially because it got a lot of nominations too, for the critic choice, for Golden Globes, and yeah, it gets a lot of attention. And it has, so many producers like Joel Edgerton, Jessica Seinfeld, so many celebrities incorporate in making the documentary when it was, during the production. So it got a lot of attention.
And
Thank you.
I do have a couple. Oh, go ahead, Vern, because I had a couple of for the documentary section.
I was just saying thanks. Thanks. I really appreciate that.
Well, first I want to double down on the Scorsese produced Made in England. Sila, over on our UK cinema history has you've watched a few of the Powell and Pressburger films. We did Colonel Blimp and of course one of my personal favorite films of all time, A Canterbury Tale over there. Um, but Scorsese and his editor Thelma, and I always mispronounce her last name. It's actually pronounced Showmaker. Um, have a special affinity with Powell and Pressburger. Michael Powell was actually married to Thelma Showmaker for the last 20 years of his life, and the film is not just what you're gonna think is just a showing clips of films with Scorsese narrating why he likes them and filling in little bits of personal life. It is a deep journey into what it means to create film at that high a level in that kind of an industry, and I think it's vital watching for anybody who's a cinemaphile. On the same note, there's a documentary called Masaki and the Heron about the making of The Boy and the Heron. Now, I am not the big anime or animation fan. We're going to be doing Ralph Bakshi's Coonskin 2 weeks from now, and um, that is as far into animation as I get. I got into anime to the small amount that I am through my children's love of it. But this documentary made me realize just what a great art form it is. And it's about Masaki making his very last film, unless he unretires again. But this is presumed to be his last film. And it's painstakingly takes you step by step into how each one of these cells is made, and yet every single shot of it is a hand drawn work of art. So I would add that to the list of documentaries as well. And on that note, we've run 3.5 hours in this room. So out of this, and I thank you all for being here. But I am going to do a once around, and I'm going to just say not even just final thoughts on 2024, but final thoughts on anything that we talked about. And I'm going to start with our good friend Sila Blume, all the way from Spain.
Entonces lo digo en español. No, um, I really have nothing to say except thank you for um, allowing us the space to discuss a little bit about film again. And I would just leave it at that before I get to my 90 seconds.
Thank you very much, Sila. Vern, our beloved chocolate peanut, as you call yourself in your bio. Your final thoughts on anything that we discussed.
Yeah, so I put in the chat, understanding movies. There, Leonard and Daniel are going to do a discussion on Murnau's The Last Laugh. So I put the link in the chat. I think it's going to be next Saturday at 3. So anyone who's interested, we're gonna. I think they want to maybe try to crank the room up again, but they've been talking about this for over a month.
A
So who knows
year.
what's going to happen? Yeah,
No, a year. The first time I heard about it was in February of last year when Leonard brought it up.
right. Well,
It's
there you
because
go.
he's finally got Daniel on board.
Yeah. But then the other thing I wanted to say is is I really, I'm always jonesing for these movie discussions, and I'm just not watching enough films. And Yasi and I, we text back and forth, but basically she gives me about 2 minutes, and then she's like, "You're lost," and that's it. So I really appreciate that I got 3 hours of fisticuffs with Yasi, and you doing backing vocals. So yeah, so I'm gonna try to come back. I think I've never watched what's the vampire movie, Nostrafu. right?
Yeah, Nosferatu. Yeah,
Yeah,
Nosferatu.
two different
Nosferatu. Yeah,
versions.
because ever since I was like 3, that poster has just freaked me out. So I've just had an aversion. But I really like Willem Dafoe, and I love Dracula the book. So I think when we were on Telegram talking about it, so I know there's a lot of interest amongst the Understanding Movie folks. So I think we might be able to do a reunion around that. There seemed to be a lot of interest. So we'll be back for that, I'm pretty sure.
That will be next Sunday. We'll be meeting here at 6 p.m. Next Sunday,
Okay,
yeah, and Yazzie and I are definitely planning on being at the last laugh there next Saturday.
cool.
Um, Other than that, I just want to thank you for coming, Vern. We have missed you. You are a voice that we deeply need here. If it doesn't have to be on Clubhouse, but just in film in general. And thank you for coming. Yazzie, final thoughts on 2024 or anything else that we've discussed.
Yeah, so the year for franchises, reboots, remakes, sequels, from Godzilla, from Dune, even Furiosa, I don't know, the Inside Out 2, Despicable Me 4, Planet of the Apes, Bad Boys, Beverly Hills Cops, everything. And 2024, such a turmoil year with everything that happened. The movie, again, going back to the whole, I'm gonna like wrap up everything that we were talking about. Some Against all odds, that this was the year that everything that happened subvert the expectations. Everything that happened was against all odds. I think with all that, one filmmaker proved that you can still make a sequel after 35 years and make and still keep your unique voice and vision and create something that everyone likes. We still have things that everyone share and love, even though it's a movie about like the oddcast and odd and uh, about the afterlife and the whimsical vision of Tim Burton brought everyone together this summer for Beetlejuice and redefine that expectation of a sequel. So see, cinema still can surprise you, can the things that we feel like we know, it's so familiar, still can be, have some new voices in it, and everyone can like it, in this like atmosphere of division, and everyone hates each other these days. And this, we go to we were just talking like for 2 hours, we were just talking about like, why should we go to movies with hate? We should go to movies with love. We should accept everything. And Beetlejuice, I think the reason that some of Tim Burton movies has been like a religion to a group of people like me, with that amazing, like the dreamy Danny Elfman's music, is because it has this message of, you know, dead and alive can live together. Just like what Dylan was saying, like the you know the the winners can be losers tomorrow. The winners would be losers tomorrow. The losers would be the winners. So this, taking away the judgment from the ugly. There is no such thing as ugly. There's no such thing as, again, I said this, going to everything with nuances. That is the message of hope in Beetlejuice, with which, like, the main characters is someone that is a dead character, is an antagonist. I think is says it all about 2024. This, and to believe that a, a sequels still can be beautiful, can sound new. This blurring of genre, what he did, like, is that something that we see in almost every movie this year. So this approach to cinema, to as like create a horror without any horror tropes, to this juxtaposition of visual aesthetics and themes and tones uh, and I really like that everyone went and watched this movie and it was in box office, because it's not something that happens with someone like Tim Burton a lot. So again, that was something that was one of the best things that happened last year. I think to to see someone like Tim Burton finally made it to the box office with the movie that he liked, not the movie that Disney, that with the expectations of him, that was forced on him, but something that was personal to him, to an art. It's very personal, heartfelt, and something created with liberty. So, and he brought something that I really like, that is, that is so amazing. His love, just because we talked about Italian cinema, he brought his love for Mario Bava and Freda and Dario Argento to this with a woman, with Monica Bellucci, with the most gorgeous, actress, and that reincarnation of kind of Lisa Mary in Monica Bellucci, and when she was like wandering around all in the movie, it was so beautiful, so well done. The music is amazing, and it's entertaining. Sometimes I know it happens to someone like me. I know that I have this problem of overreading movies, of getting so emotional about movies. I want everyone to like everything just like me. But and then it comes Beetlejuice. So you can just sit back and watch it. It has music. It has all these, I can like go over and, you know, analyze every symbol in the movie. I can talk about like I said something earlier this year to Sila about Beetlejuice, that how it, like, from the linguistic point of view, it has I can like overread the Beetlejuice for you and like go over the symbolism, the mythology, and all that. But I just suggest everyone to just sit back and watch this movie, to enjoy it. Watch it because it has the vision, the the dream world, the magical, whimsical dream world of, that when the nightmare can be beautiful, of Tim Burton. And that's what movies are. They make nightmares beautiful.
Thank you, Yazzie, for yet another impassionate plea for people to watch a film that did not get very, very good reviews. And again, that is one of the things we love most about you, is that you can find the best things in films that nobody else likes, and we love that. We love you for that. We absolutely do, and of course for your passion. All right. So yes, join us. If you're on in understanding movies, or want to discuss Murnau's The Last Laugh, we'll be over in the understanding movies room with Vern and the old crew, getting the old band back together on Saturday at 3 p.m. Then Sunday at 6 p.m. FW Murnau will be one of the topics of conversation here, where we will be discussing three different versions of the film Nosferatu, also including the Werner Herzog 1979 version and the current Robert Eggers version, plus a version that a friend of the show, Mark Redford, recommended to me, where they actually used the original as a green screen and reenacted it as a talkie that I'm going to talk about. That one's not necessary to view. I do recommend that you watch at least the first two. The Robert Eggers version is something we will be discussing spoiler free, however, so if you haven't seen the new version in the theaters, we will not be ruining it for you. So join us for that. We'll be following that the following Sunday with a discussion. Uh, uh, it's answering a question that I get all the time from trolls, especially on YouTube. Do you people fuck? And Yasi Sofi is going to give us a special episode called uh, How European Cinema Shaped My Sex Life. And we will have the answer to that question for all you trolls on YouTube. And then we will be ending the month with a discussion of the Ralph Bakshi's animated film Coonskin, which was very controversial at the time. And we'll be asking the question is, are we too woke for Ralph Bakshi's Coonskin? And quite honestly, was the film racist in the first place? And so that's our month schedule. Thank you again, Yasi Sofi, Vern, Sila Blume, Jelena, we always love having you in the audience, and I'm probably mispronouncing your name. You, thank you for joining us late. I'm sorry, but this will be available also on uh, Apple podcast. It will also be available as a replay here on Clubhouse and on YouTube. So looking forward to it. Yes, Vern, I thought Hey Good Looking was a pretty good movie too, but not as controversial as Coonskin. So not that's why we chose Coonskin. Um, anyway, thank you everybody. If unless anybody's got anything else, I'm going to be ending the room in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good night, everybody, and we'll see you next week.